Oh, woe me. Time to wake up.
Rise and shine, Stubby. Wake up. Up and at 'em. Fine, then. That's for all the clown jokes. That's for never calling just to say hi. That's because I get aroused when I slap people. That's for all the furry midgets in the world. That's because I feel like it. Why won't you wake up? Wake up! That's because the player keeps mashing the button. That's because I like slapping fleshy things with this hand. That's for being in more comics than me. That's for making me love you. That's for making me hate you. That's for never taking us to the prom. That's for always working late. That's for being short. That's for stabbing me in the heart. Literally. That's for never letting me fly the Blackbird except when I crashed it. That's for being the worst wingman in bromance history. That's because I want to see if the player will keep doing this. That's for all the hot gamer girls out there. Hey, call me. That's for being a total douche. That's for never washing the dishes. That's for last year's white elephant gift. Who wants a white elephant? And finally, that's because the whole setup just added 5 minutes of bonus play to the most awesome game ever devised by mutants or man. I guess he's not waking up.
Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome to episode 9 of FTL Radio. I'm your host, Chris, here, and with me on the line, as always, is Jacob, my buddy. How you doing, man?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing very well on this Sunday evening, sort of an abnormal night for us to be recording, but you know what? Sometimes you got to work around different schedules. Schedules being that tomorrow is Jacob's birthday, and he is going to be out on the town and spending some time with his lady friend, so he deserves that. So we just figured to push up the recording a little bit.
Yeah, thanks a lot for doing that.
You're very welcome. I know you love that.
Oh yeah, I love when my birthday gets in the way of doing anything productive. I love it.
Oh, don't be such a bitch.
Oh, you know it's true. You know I'd rather be home tomorrow night writing my novel or something stupid like that, so.
Yeah. But instead you're probably going to have a nice meal and get laid and have fun. So, don't bitch.
Anyway. So,
Science fiction.
Yeah, for sure. So this episode's going to be fun. We're going to talk about a few different news things, and we do our first real big review.
Yeah, I finished the book.
Yes, Chris, he finished the book. We're reviewing John Scalzi's Lock-In. We will give you a big warning when we are jumping into the review. Unfortunately, there will be spoilers in this review, so if you have not read it yet, go to Amazon.com or go to Barnes & Noble, go to really any bookstore. They're going to have it, and look for John Scalzi's Lock-In. It's currently in hardcover or Kindle or whatever the hell you read your things on. And get it, because, you know, we'll talk about later. It was a pretty damn good book.
It was a good book. I enjoyed it. And you know what? It's a quick read. It keeps your interest, and you know, the chapters blend together really well, so I liked it.
Yeah, so, anyway, so we'll talk about that later in the show, and we'll give you a big warning. So you don't hear any spoilers if you have not read it yet.
But that's the big story.
Yeah.
As usual, we have some news.
Yeah, some news. Apparently, Warner Brothers wants to... they want to take DC Comics, which they already kind of own, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Warner and DC have been synonymous for years.
Yeah, but they really want to try and take a lot more of their DC properties and put it onto the big screen. They want to copy Marvel, which makes sense because...
It's a cash cow.
It's a cash cow. You know, it's the same reason why I'm in support of... You know, the Sci-Fi Channel doing things. You know, if it's going to make the business money, great. And if it's going to, you know, allow them to create other great things, great.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what DC wants to, what Warner Brothers wants to do is they want David Ayers to direct a Suicide Squad movie.
And yeah, for all the watchers of Arrow out there, the Suicide Squad sort of made a small screen appearance this past season.
Uh-huh.
And they're I guess they're trying to take that same group of characters and to be honest with you, I'm not all too familiar. I mean, they're a couple of effectively they're the Suicide Squad. If you don't know what they are, they're a loose configuration of supervillains that are tasked with carrying out government missions involving assassination and whatever in exchange for their prison sentences being cut short. So it's kind of like an anti-hero but working with the government, good guy but bad guy kind of thing. You know, popular names include Deadshot, Harley Quinn, King Shark.
Which, I don't know Deadshot, I don't know King Shark, but I know Harley Quinn.
Deadshot's a pretty big character.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't really watch DC, you know. Like, the very fact that the CW's Arrow is supposed to be something to do with Batman or Gotham or something along those lines, I had no idea.
Oh, you see, I didn't know that either.
Or maybe I'm completely wrong, but like I remember specifically. Well, here these people are. I mean, Harley Quinn is accomplices with the Joker who fights Batman.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is all in the same universe. I mean, I don't think they make direct reference, or at least I haven't seen a lot of direct reference of those other characters like Superman or Batman. But I watched the first season of The Arrow on Netflix. So it's an entertaining show. It's a good comic book show. It's on the CW, so it does suffer from the incessant teenage drama.
Oh, is that what it is?
Well, it's a factor in it. The main part of the main part of it is this badass superhero story, and that works well.
So basically, I looked it up.
Yeah.
And the story has to do with the Green Arrow, which is a DC comic. But here's the synopsis. You ready? The series follows billionaire playboy Oliver Queen, who, after 5 years of being stranded on a hostile island, returns home to fight crime and corruption as a secret vigilante whose weapon of choice is a bow and arrow. Really?
Well, that's why it's a comic book show.
No,
you don't walk into it taking it seriously.
No, that's fine. Here's what my problem is. Let me change that a little bit. Batman, it follows the playboy billionaire Bruce Wayne, who, after spending a lot of time away from home, comes back home to a very bad Gotham, and his weapon of choice is the Bat Blank. Like, wow.
Yeah, they're very similar.
Anyways,
the parallels are out of control right there. Yeah.
So anyway, this movie is going to be. I mean, when I sent these topics to Chris, his response was meh.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, DC is trying to take a piece of that Marvel pie, but Marvel's already got it, and they're running with it, and they're making money, and they're making great movies. I'm yet to see that out of DC.
Well, that's not true.
No, okay, in a different vein. They're trying to expand. Of course they made Batman, The Dark Knight.
Here's the thing, though. And here's where, I like to be a little bit of devil's advocate. If they are going to try and court David Ayers, David Ayers wrote the script to Training Day, which I don't know if you ever saw that movie, but that was a dark movie.
Okay, no, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it had Denzel Washington in it, who plays a cop, an undercover cop or a detective who brings another guy on board with him, but really, he's a dirty cop.
Okay,
and it's a dark, gritty, nudity, drugs, sex, violence, language. It's just a dark, gritty movie.
Fun.
Apparently, he also was the director for the upcoming or the recent movie, Fury, which is Brad Pitt's World War II movie that I actually really want to see. It's about like a tank group in World War II.
Okay.
So, like, all things considered, Batman was really great. DC did, allowed that to go where it was going. If they're going to bring on a director like this, maybe it could be okay.
I'm sorry. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that I don't think it's going to be good. I just don't. To be honest with you, I've always been more of a Marvel guy. Like, Batman is awesome. I love Batman to death, but any Marvel character, I would take over him generally.
Well, I think they're two different, styles, and that has a lot to do with, just the audience. I mean,
well, the way I've always described it is Marvel sort of made more complicated characters. Superman, not a very complicated character. All of these other... I can't say that about Batman, because Batman is really the most Marvel-esque of the DC characters. He had his parents killed, but he's still a billionaire playboy, Well,
yeah. But when it comes to the movies, I feel like Marvel tends to make their movies kind of light.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's not meant to weigh you down.
No.
Whereas, succeed or fail, which I think they failed at with the Superman reboots, the Man of Steel and all that. Batman, that was dark. Like that Joker was tough.
Well, yeah, and the Dark Knight, and it did a really great job of bringing that universe to reality, because you saw the Batman the Animated Series show, and you had this goofy looking Joker voiced by Mark Hamill, but then you get the Joker that was, oh God, name is escaping me right this second.
Heath
Ledger, thank you. You get the Heath Ledger Joker, and he was real, just unbelievable. That's
the role that
haunting. Yeah, well, I guess so.
But yeah, so I mean, this movie's not going to come out for another 6 years. Like, this movie, according to the reports, this movie is slated to hit before 2020. So, Who the hell knows? But you know what?
Technically, tomorrow's before 2020, but yeah, it's not coming for a long, long time.
But here is something that is coming.
Oh, please say it.
Oh, I'm gonna say it.
Please do it.
So apparently, Deadpool has received a 2016 release date.
Thank God. This has been weighing on comic book fans for, I don't know, ever since X-Men Origins Wolverine was announced and Ryan Reynolds was cast in the role, and everyone was like, "What? Ryan Reynolds is playing Deadpool? That's perfect."
Yeah.
So everyone has been waiting for this news, and they had said they were going to do a full feature Deadpool specific movie. And then it just went into development hell for years, and now to see it finally emerge is just it's great.
Mm-hmm. Now here's the thing. It's the rumors are that Ryan Reynolds might actually be in it.
Rumors. I thought he was on board.
No deals have been set yet.
Okay, that's unfortunate.
Director Tim Miller is expected to also be on it, though once again, not certain.
Okay.
And I do believe Tim Miller is in fact the director who did X-Men Origins Wolverine, where Deadpool shows up the first time. So,
Well, that makes me upset.
Yeah. Now here's what concerns me, and here's what worries me. This isn't a Marvel movie. This is a 20th Century Fox movie.
Well, but they own X-Men, and Deadpool is technically in the X-Men universe.
Right. No, and I get that, but you know, Marvel has done an amazing job with their movies. I can't say the same for 20th Century Fox. They butchered the Fantastic Four.
Hmm.
I mean,
yeah. I mean, they didn't do a great job with it.
You know, some of these origin movies have been abysmal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, so it's going to be, look, if they can do it, it'll be great. You know, but they've also got a bunch of other projects that are that are being worked on right now, including an Assassin's Creed movie.
That's weird.
You know who I was reading today? There was a name that popped up for that movie.
Okay.
And that was Robert Downing Jr.
Really?
Yeah.
For Assassin's Creed?
Yeah.
Why? Where?
I don't know. No, you know what? No. Robert Downing Jr. would play an amazing
Ezio Auditore.
Yeah. He played an amazing antagonist.
Mm.
He would play the amazing, this is the last person the assassin needs to kill.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I personally, I think that, I guess I'll let them see where they go with it, but the whole video games being turned into movies is a whole nother conversation.
I mean, how is it any different than making a comic?
It's very different because video games are interactive. Comics are pre-canned stories. I mean, video games are pre-canned stories a lot of the time too, but they're, the character that you're playing as is not supposed to be a character. He's supposed to be you.
Yeah.
It's a bit different.
So I decided to Google it and find out exactly what the rumor was.
Okay.
So Robert Downey Jr. does not play the primary villain.
Okay.
He is slated to play Leonardo da Vinci.
That was my second. I was going to say that. He would make a good Da Vinci.
Yeah.
Very, out there.
Yeah, I do agree with you about the whole turning video games into movies to an extent. And the reason I agree with you is, like, it was always the issue with let me think, Mass Effect or Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic.
Mm-hmm.
You have multiple storylines.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You kind of go on, but then you only have one ending.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the canon. And what I mean by one ending is, like, so in Knights of the Old Republic, Revan, he goes good. He becomes good.
Yeah.
Like, there is no going bad. Like, that's your decisions.
That's the canon of the story.
And, right, But Assassin's Creed, that's not the case. And I think that's why they could make it is, you're following a predetermined path for you. Yeah,
and now that you mention that, Assassin's Creed, I guess maybe would be one of the better stories because it is very historical. It is a set story, and while there is a little bit of player influence to how the game ends, it's not anywhere near the effect of like a Mass Effect or something like that, where you can really have separate endings.
Right, like, could you honestly imagine a Mass Effect movie where John Shepard does something?
I don't need a Mass Effect movie.
I agree.
I don't feel the need for one. I think they do a great job in the games. I think that the books really bring the world to life. If you haven't read any of Drew Karpyshyn's books for Mass Effect and you're interested, I highly recommend them because they're very well written, and they really delve deep into this really rich universe that BioWare created for this.
Yeah, BioWare really has an opportunity with this universe to create something that Star Wars did.
I think they're they're on their way. They obviously don't have the mass hysteria around the property that everyone loves it, but I mean, everyone who's played it and generally everyone who's touched it has loved it.
Yeah, but I mean, think about it, and this was unintentional to jump into Mass Effect, but hey, whatever. Let's think about it. They had 3 great games.
Yeah, well,
listen,
I
finished
two and 9/10 of a great game.
No. They had 3 great games, and here's what I'm gonna say: they had a bad release, but the game, once they fixed it, is great. That ending makes sense.
The fact that they had to fix it still bugs me. I'm sorry. I'll never not be bugged by that. You could try to talk me out of it as much as you want.
Chris, are you gonna edit this podcast?
Eventually.
Yeah, you're gonna fix things. Things need to be fixed.
No, I'm not gonna edit like the content of it. I'm gonna put voice compressors and.
Right. My point is this. Look,
I know what you're saying.
Look, it was a great game, and that ending had to happen that way. Like, no. What else are you gonna do? The ending is, humanity wins. And that's it?
Something else. I don't know. It's not my job to tell the story.
No,
it's their job.
That's the thing. No. But that's the thing is, and this is, and I throw this out to, it's very easy to say that's not good, but what's good?
Here's the thing that bugged me about the ending, and let's not try to delve too much into this because this is way off the beaten path.
I don't care. Let's go.
Okay. What bugged me about the ending is that the entire Mass Effect franchise was all about humanity overcoming the rules. And the game ended with Commander Shepard given 3 rules, and said, you could pick one of the 3. Commander Shepard, he or she says, fuck that. I don't play by the rules. That's how I got as far as I did. It was all about humanity by being humans and by being, having emotion and having intuition that these other more robotic alien species didn't have. They could overcome things that were not usually overcomeable or, whatever. Anyway, They sort of ditched that in the last 10 minutes of the game. And that's what really bugged me.
Right. And what that proves and what that did was showed that humanity is not greater than the galaxy.
Yeah, I guess so, but that's not the ending that people wanted.
Yeah, but people don't have to get what they want for the ending to be the right ending.
And you know what? And this is where we kind of get mixed up because you played the new ending. I've never played the new ending.
All right, yeah, but
I played the original ending that was broken.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing: is the new ending was you make one of these 3 decisions, and then it's boom, dead, game over. Like, for me, the new ending, it was still kind of the same thing. It was you have to make one of these 3 decisions, and if you don't make one of these decisions, a decision has been made for you, and that decision is humanity is dead. Spoiler alert.
Okay.
So you still have to make one of the 3 decisions, but the difference is now that you've made a decision, you get to see what that decision does. Yeah. And that's really what the difference is, I think, between the two.
I still don't like it.
Yeah, but that's because, as despite this humanity fuck yeah thing that we have going for us, we'd like a happy ending.
Well, that's what the game was. The game was humanity fuck yeah.
Right, until it proves the fact that humanity fuck yeah can't happen when you're talking about the universe.
Well, but you gotta understand that upsets people when you introduce that element in the last 10 minutes of a multi-day. I mean,
listen,
the amount of hours they put into that game.
Then they need to really think about it themselves, accept the fact that they like little cheesy endings, and move on with their lives.
Oh yeah, I would have loved a cheesy ending on that.
Yeah, but see, that's not good storytelling.
See, it was bad storytelling when I played the ending as well, though.
No, it was. But that ending, the ending that it's supposed to be, is good storytelling.
Okay. Well, I'll have to go back and rewatch it, but it's
yeah. Well, I mean, think about it. Here's a spoiler for Game of Thrones. Eddard Stark, the happy ending is not him dying, but that's the right ending.
Well, but that's the thing. They introduce at the end of the first book that this is not one of those stories, which I'm totally fine with. I'm okay when it's not one of those stories. But when you play it out like one of those stories and then pull the plug on the audience might turn on you.
Yeah, but they made that series still, those video games still made it out that your decisions could have consequences. It was still a consequence-based game, like to the very fact that characters could die. And you saw that in the first game when you pick Ashley or whatever the hell his
Caden.
name is. Caden. You know, obviously I picked Ashley every time. That's why I don't remember Caden.
Yeah.
You know, but you learn that. Like, you learn this game is going to have consequences. And if you honestly believed that you could go into it with this idea that, you know, that Shepard was coming out of this alive, that was never, look, humanity came out of it alive because of a decision you make. The Geth come out of it alive depending on the decision you make. Even the Reapers come out of it alive depending on the decision that you make.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that the hero that is Shepard coming out alive doesn't make sense. Anakin Skywalker doesn't come out alive. And he is the prime character in episodes 1 through 6. You know, we can say Luke Skywalker is, but he's not.
Episodes 1 through 3 he is.
No, but that's the thing,
6,
is if you understand really what George Lucas was doing with all 6 of those movies, and if he really, and when he said this, if he honestly meant this and had this in his mind from the get-go, this is the story of Anakin Skywalker's fall to the dark side and the recovery. Luke Skywalker, while yes, he is the main character in 4, 5, and 6, is in fact a secondary character to the main overarching story.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
So Anakin Skywalker had to die.
Yeah.
John Shepard had to die. He had to. Because if he lives, what is that? What's the point? And more importantly,
I don't care that he died. I just think that the way that they did it was wrong.
To pretty much have the hero of the galaxy come up to a force greater than him, and for everything to...
but that's the thing. He's been coming up to forces greater than him throughout the entire series.
No, there's greater than him, and then there is literally...
And then there's Godchild.
Right, and then there's galactic rules.
Yes.
You know,
it was over the top, high concept. It was way outside of the realm of everything that they had built up until that point, and they introduce it with the last 10 minutes to go in the game. I still think it's the wrong ending. I'm sorry, you're not going to talk me out of this.
And that's okay. Listen, it's for the person that wants closure, for the person that wants a happy ending.
Well, there is closure. There is closure. I just think it's the wrong ending.
It's the wrong ending for a happy ending. You're right.
No, it's the wrong ending for anything, because even with the new endings, there are happy endings. With the synthesis ending, where everyone
is equal.
Is equal. Like, that's a happy ending. Yeah, sure, Shepard still dies, but that's still a happy ending. It's not the happy part of it that bugs me. It's just the fact that they had this, the entire universe was in this bubble. And then in the last 10 minutes, they're like, oh no, Godchild, he makes all the rules. You have to pick one of his 3 doors what's behind door A, B, or C. And that's the conclusion to this trilogy, this epic trilogy that was so grounded in great storytelling and then just flies off the rails in the last 10 minutes.
But it doesn't, I mean...
It so does.
But it really doesn't if you come to the culmination. We knew Godchild existed. For the entire 3rd game, we knew Godchild existed.
Did we?
Yeah.
When did they say that? When did they introduce him?
The name of that species, I'm Googling this right now. Who created the Reapers?
Oh, God.
I'm looking it up.
Because the last time I played that game was when I finished it when it first came out, so...
All right. So, I will tell you, the Leviathans were an ancient aquatic race that dominated the galaxy in the time before the Reapers. They created the Reapers.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, and that's why they look like giant squid, because that is what the Leviathans look like. So what the Leviathans did is they created an AI. Yeah. And that AI's purpose was to prevent, and it's been a little while since I've done this, was to prevent the rise of a species that could destroy them.
Mm-hmm. And no, I remember the story aspect of it. I remember that they built the Reapers to basically cleanse the galaxy to make sure that nothing overcame them. Right, so we know this AI exists. Yeah. We know that there are rules put in place by this AI. We know this. Mm-hmm. So it's not as if in those last 10 minutes, suddenly we're introduced to this foreign concept. What the issue is... That's what it feels like, though. No, and the issue is not that. The issue is that you realize that everything that you did was for nothing. That's another negative aspect of it, sure. See, you know what? That's life. Yeah, but I don't play video games or read stories to get life. I know life. I have life. Yes. I live life. But BioWare never said that BioWare said they were creating a game that was meant to be great. That was meant to be like life. And I agree that it was great up until the last 10 minutes.
But that's life. You can't say in one breath that it's great and it emulates life and it does all these things that we wanted it to do that made the game so difficult to bear with, and then at the same time say, when presented with the very fact that we are without power to do something, the game sucks.
I don't think the game sucks. I think the ending sucks.
I think the ending was brilliant.
Okay, well,
And
I disagree.
Look, and that's fine.
Well, you keep saying it's fine, but you keep trying to convince me.
No, I'm not trying to convince you. I'm presenting the reason why. What I'm doing is not saying that the ending is good or bad and that you should agree with me. What I'm saying is you shouldn't have been shocked.
Okay.
You shouldn't have been shocked. Because BioWare queued this up. They let you know that shit was going down.
I must have missed the memo.
No, what you expected. You came into it with an expectation.
I came into it with this universe that I had been introduced to already, that I had been playing 2 games in, and then I'd played through most of the third in, and then they introduced this character and this other species, and you say that they introduced it earlier. I don't remember that. I have no recollection of that, so I can't say I can agree with you on that.
Okay. Well, I'm telling you that it's the case.
Okay.
Just, it's fine.
Is that maybe something that was patched in?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Patches were all in the end.
Okay.
But no, I mean, this game laid out very clearly that there was that for eternity these things have destroyed the galaxy every 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
That they had a purpose for that humanity could never understand that purpose. And what this story was to me wasn't humanity breaking the rules. It was humanity accepting the rule. Because the problem with all the games isn't that Shepard breaks the rules and humanity fuck yeah. It was that the primary rule of the galaxy, it was then that Shepard said, no, break the rule. You don't need to destroy us because I make this decision.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to destroy because species has finally evolved to the point. So from that perspective, this is the ultimate humanity fuck yeah.
And yes, it is. Again, it's the way that they did it. And you're right, maybe the ending would have been better if they eased into it. But to take a game and this big dramatic ending and then
completely fuck you and make you really hate it to the point that you're talking about it years later, they did exactly what they were supposed to do. So let's look.
They caught a lot of flack for that.
They caught a lot of flack because people were surprised.
Yeah, people were upset.
No, people were upset because they didn't expect it.
People were upset because they did it wrong.
No, people were upset because they didn't expect it. You can say whatever you want, but if people had any inkling that was happening, they would not have been upset. They would have still played all 3 games. They would have said the games were amazing, but they wouldn't have been talking about it years later.
I would probably still be talking about the game.
No, because the ending would have been too open shut. It would have been too easy. Shepard wins. He builds a big army.
But that's the thing. I don't know if
the Reapers.
You might be right. This might be the right ending, but I think that the way that they did it.
So Chris,
because storytelling is not just writing words on a page. It is guiding an audience to a conclusion, and the way that they got to this conclusion was just bad.
Wasn't, but okay. No, so here's the thing.
Well, but here's the thing. You played it a year later when they fixed many years later when they fixed the ending.
So here's the thing: is you're coming into this with the argument of, and for the record, you have watched the endings because I made you watch them.
I have, but they haven't fixed because you know what? It's never going to recover from that initial feeling of just it's a feeling of betrayal, really, when you put so much time and love into a story.
So rather than arguing it from a rational perspective that this was the right ending, you're upset.
Well,
I'm
upset because that's the ending that came out with the game. You think they would have released this second ending if people didn't bitch as much as they bitched?
And BioWare said, BioWare said, you're right. We didn't give you enough information at that ending. Let me add more information. But guess what? They didn't change the ending.
So the conclusion of this whole conversation then is that my organic initial experience, and yours, I'm not saying yours was inorganic, but my experience of the game was bad, and your experience was good because you played it when it was fixed.
Which is very different than what our argument has been.
I guess so, but
because what you are saying, and I completely agree with you, Chris.
Okay.
BioWare fucked up.
Yes, they did.
Because BioWare did not release the right detail with that ending, but BioWare did not fuck up to have that as the ending.
And I think I said that before. I said that might have been the right ending, but the way that they did it was wrong. So we're actually saying the same thing and just getting half hour into a podcast talking about it.
Yeah, so let's move on to the topic, which is actually kind of interesting because this godchild in Mass Effect, one of the things that comes up is it finds that the only way it can do its job is to kill the Leviathan, and that's kind of where this starts from. Is it's given a task, but its task, the rules are so weird that it realizes the only way to execute the task given to it is to go against the species that gave it the task. So there are these rules that Isaac Asimov wrote called the Law of Robotics. And those laws, there are 3/4 of them.
And you might remember, I think these are the laws that flashed up at the beginning of the iRobot movie and everything. Yep.
So rule number 1, a robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. Rule number 2, a robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. And then later on, a 0th law was added, which is meant to precede the others. A robot may not harm humanity or by inaction allow humanity to come to harm. So that number 0 is actually kind of interesting because, if a crazy mass genocidal guy were to literally try to destroy the Earth, a robot could effectively kill him, maybe if it was for the betterment of humanity.
Yeah, it sort of walks you into a moral conundrum, or
Right.
the robot, rather, into a conundrum, which is sort of what this next article is all about.
Right. So this article, a roboticist from the Bristol Robotics Laboratory in the UK, that first law, is really interesting. The inability to hurt a human either by or without action. So what they did is they set up an experiment. And what they would do is they would have a few robots, few automations, programmed to behave a certain way. One of them was meant to be like an actual robot trying to save humans, and other automations were set up to be like humans who were moving towards a hole and that were going to fall.
Yeah.
So what happens here is when you put one automation as a robot against, heading towards a hole, the robot is able to save it. But when you put 2 automations, that robot runs into an issue, and this was an ethical trap. Because what does the robot do? So the robot goes off and saves the first one, but now the robot can't get to the second one. So by acting, the robot effectively doomed one of the humans to death. But what they found was out of 33 trials, there were 14 instances where the robot was paralyzed by the decision. And it just stopped.
So it's like can't save both of them. So
right, and the problem there is that breaks the rule because a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm, and yet because there were 2 human beings, both came to harm.
Yeah. So it can either act on one of them and save one of them, and therefore by acting on that one, it is betraying the first law for the other one.
Yep.
Or it can just do nothing at all and effectively just fuck it.
Yeah, and then both of them come to harm, which means that they broke their rule. And
Yeah.
it's just, it's crazy. There's a short little video about it, and I'll link to it in the notes about this. But it's really kind of crazy because, like, what does it do? How does it know who to save? How does it know what to do? And there were a couple of times where the robot was able to save both of them. They didn't film that, so I wasn't able to see how they did it. I can think of an example, one being rather than the robot going towards the human going into the hole, it would go at an opposite angle and push it out of the way that way, and then it would still be close. Whatever.
Semantics.
Yeah, but so I could picture it, but it really is an ethical problem because how does a robot follow the rule?
Well, and it's interesting because specifically this article mentions that yes, we are moving into. I mean, this this experiment by itself is just a sort of a loose test of that first rule. But if we're moving into a world of automated motor vehicles and stuff like that, what happens if there's a situation where it's just damned if you do, damned if you don't?
Right. And where we found this article, the argument is presented: what if the vehicle were placed in a situation where it had to choose to save its passengers versus other motorists or pedestrians on the road? What if that vehicle had to decide, I either hit that motorcycle, which hitting motorcycles is to both both Chris and I, very important things because both our dads ride, but hitting a motorcycle or dying yourself?
Yeah.
How does that robotic car make that decision?
And this test is very interesting because right now it doesn't sound like it can. 14 out of 33 times.
Yeah, and then what happens is the car freezes up and the car hits the motorcyclist dies, the driver dies, and everyone's dead.
Yeah.
And how does that work? Unless this right here is the way that robots destroy humanity.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, we're moving towards this, but this trial sort of seems like we have a ways to go.
Yeah.
In terms of figuring out if-then situations.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. And I mean, I don't know. And neither does the scientist, for the record. Alan Winfield is the lead scientist, and he gave he presented his findings at the beginning of September, and he describes his robot as an ethical zombie. When he was asked if he believes in the possibility of robots being able to make ethical choices, he responded, "My answer is I have no idea."
Yeah, and that's kind of telling.
Yeah, but it's really like I watched last night. Victoria allowed me to watch, and allowed me is the wrong word, but Victoria was willing to watch any movie that I wanted to watch last night because it's my birthday weekend, and so I wanted to watch RoboCop.
Nice.
And it's obviously an anti-drone kind of movie. It's kind of the theme, and Samuel L. Jackson plays like a Rush Limbaugh kind of character.
Okay.
It was kind of cool. But anyway, what happens in this is, all around the world, Americans are fine with drones being there. Robots, whether they're flying, whether they're walking, we're fine, but we don't want them here. So that's why we need a human in a robot, because we're okay with that.
Yeah.
So, but if that's the direction we're moving, does that robot know when it's okay to shoot someone?
That's a good question.
Since emotions don't factor into logic and ones and zeros, do they know when they can engage, or do they know when they should not engage?
Well, the big question is, how can they accurately take a situation and boil it down and make the right decision?
Yeah. Agreed.
Because right and wrong is difficult to write into ones and zeros. Right and wrong is still something the human race is struggling with today.
But yeah, I mean, right and wrong is personal opinion.
Exactly.
In America,
so how do you program personal opinion?
Exactly. In American culture, right and wrong, suicide is wrong in American culture, but in the Japanese culture, back during the samurai, suicide was acceptable and it was honorable.
Yeah.
So, it's how do you program right or wrong when it's personal opinion?
Exactly. And you know what? Talking about programming and what's it called? Artificial intelligence and not so artificial intelligence. That all sort of plays a bit of a part in the book we just read.
Yeah, so this is your very big, very, very, very big
spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Don't listen. If you are ever going to want to read this book, don't listen.
Yeah, the tail end of this podcast is all going to be talking about John Scalzi's Lock-In, which we both had the pleasure of reading. We got a copy shipped to us from the publisher, and we went through it, and now is our official review.
Yes.
I should pull out a sound effect or something.
Yeah, you'll figure it out post-production.
Yeah.
So, a little background. John Scalzi is... it's interesting. I have been wanting to read his work for so many years and have never actually read anything.
Okay.
And I've never bought anything, and it's not because I didn't want to read it. It was just every time I'd go to read it, something else would be in front of me that I'd be like, okay, well, let me finish this first. Because I'm very notorious for reading about 2/3 of a book and then finding a new book and buying it and being like, but I'll read this one when I'm done with this one, and then really wanting to try and read the new one. So I never was able to read it. So this was my first introduction to John Scalzi, and I really liked this book.
I liked it a lot. I have some qualms with it. But I really, I mean, I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the universe that he created. When I read the blurb about it, I was a little indifferent. I was a little worried that it might not be exciting enough, but it actually, everything about it lent to the excitement factors.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. What I found. So basically, just once again, the little premise of this, and all of you have read it, I'm assuming, but this disease kind of goes over the world, and you know, f- it creates basic flu-like symptoms. So for the majority of people, they're fine, but for some of them, and it's considered the unlucky 1%, the disease causes lock-in, which means victims are awake and aware, but they're unable to move or respond to stimuli.
And it never really spends a lot of time in that universe of just, well, it doesn't spend any time in just discovering this disease or figuring out how to deal with it. It puts you right into the future where they have been living with this disease for, what was it, 40 years or something at this point?
Yeah, I think something like that. It's a little, well, no, it's probably only about 20 some odd years, because this kid is one of the first kids to get it.
Oh,
And
that's right. Yeah,
he
yeah.
grows up with it. So the main character's name is Chris Shane, and he's a rookie FBI agent who has um, lock in. He has
Hayden syndrome.
And he becomes an FBI agent, and he's put on the team with veteran agent Leslie Vann, which their job is to solve Hayden crimes.
Yeah, they're on the Hayden task force, effectively, of the FBI. And the way that Chris Shane's able to interact and with the world, because he does have Hayden syndrome, he is effectively, I mean, his body is in a cradle with a nutrition tube and a colostomy bag, effectively. Yeah. But so the way he's able to get around, and there are sort of two or three ways that these Haydens can go outside of their body and experience life, and it's through either robots, and these robots are they call them threeps. The way they describe them, they don't really spend a lot of time describing the look of the threep, but the way that I picture them, I guess, is a humanoid robot that looks similar to a human and can speak and basically channels the consciousness of this locked-in person.
Yeah, so, and that was actually one of my first complaints, and maybe it was just because I was reading too quickly. But when they introduced the threeps, I hadn't the faintest idea that was a robot.
It wasn't just you, it was me too.
And then I kind of went back to it, and I went, oh, wait, no, that makes sense.
Which I guess isn't a terrible thing if it does make itself clear eventually.
Yeah. And it does. I mean, and then you realize that threeps is, a cute little way of paying homage to C-3PO.
Yeah.
Which...
Well, as opposed to the derogatory clank.
Yeah. And once he did that, I kind of got a better idea of what these might look like.
Yeah.
C-3PO, except with arms and legs that could actually move.
Protocol droid.
Right. So this story pretty much starts off like any Law and Order story does. Here's the crime. Here's, X, Y, and Z. Let's find out who did it. And then it turns into one crazy conspiracy book.
Yeah.
And they do a pretty good job with it. I mean Scalzi. I mean, he does a really good job with kind of piecing it all together. And, there were times where I even got lost and I had to go back and reread some parts, which I don't ever do, But, yeah, and the conspiracy kind of comes together.
Well, and the thing that I found was interesting, very interesting about this, and this goes into the second method of how these Haydens, people affected by Haydens, can experience the world. So the first one is these robotic threeps, which is effectively a personal droid that you use. Yep. The next one is an integrator, which is another person who was affected by Hayden syndrome at some point, but did not get locked in.
Right.
And so their brains are sort of similar to the ones of the Haydens, and they have this neural network, which is an adaptive physical piece of hardware that is put into their brain that adapts to their own brain. It's unique and allows Haydens to simulate or to push their consciousness through these integrators, these other people.
Right.
And the story starts out with an integrator in a room with what we will later find out to be, spoiler alert, another integrator, and one of them has just killed themselves, and the other has blood all over them.
Right, and there are specific rules to be an integrator, such as that you can't do. So if you have lock in and you go into an integrator's body, you can't actually try and kill the integrator. Later in the book, Van, who was an integrator, talks about how she nearly died as an integrator because someone with lock in wanted to experience death. And what's the best way to experience death without having to die is, be inside someone else's mind and kill the person.
Death with no consequences, well, theoretically at least.
So, that was... So the integrators are interesting. So basically this whole thing happens because a bill is coming to an end, a law that provided welfare to individuals with lock-in, and this big greedy corporate leader wants to control everything.
Yes.
That's the moral of the story. Or not the moral, but that's kind of the premise. But what I really found interesting about this book was how similar it was to, say, being blind or being deaf.
Yeah.
Like this group, like I am neither not blind nor deaf. I don't really know anyone who is. But what I do know to an extent is there might be a level of grouping together. And that's kind of what this is you have Hayden syndrome people who live together, and they take care of each other a little bit. They watch out for each other, at least in this main book, in this main family of 4 house. So that was interesting. But then I started to read some people's reviews of it.
Okay.
And one person was really, really upset about the use of a disability as a narrative choice.
Really?
Well, yeah. I mean, it would have been a great way to really show the struggle of disability.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and reading this, reading this review, I kind of understand where the person's coming from. What this person says is, disability as a narrative choice really bothered me. It's where I was the angriest. I keep reading reviews that tout this book as a piece on disability. I heartedly disagree. The narrator is wealthy, extremely wealthy. He uses and casts off expensive equipment at will, has as full-time caretakers in addition to his parents, and chooses a second apartment in the course of the novel.
Yeah.
In addition, Hayden's allows him to essentially transport himself instantaneously across the country to a new body. You know?
And that was sort of one of my qualms about, there didn't really seem to be a whole lot of conflict with the main character or through the eyes of whoever you were, Chris Shane, because he is this billionaire. He has this syndrome, but he's been coddled effectively since the beginning.
Right. And it's nothing matters to him.
Yeah.
And I mean, and for the most part, like, Scalzi does do a good job kind of explaining why that's the case. The kid's been this way for his entire life. He doesn't want to be identified as this, as the Hayden's kid. He wants to be identified as Chris Shane, the FBI agent.
Yeah.
So, and that comes off, but
then throughout the thing, he's like, well, I don't have, I don't want to use your crummy 3, so I'm going to go rent one right now because I'm a billionaire.
Right. And that's cool, but it doesn't show what real disability is like.
No, it doesn't. But then again, I don't think that's the point.
Yeah.
I think that maybe trying to draw, like, that may disappoint you, and that's fine, but he created this world of this disability that happens. I mean, it's a fictional disability, but yeah, it's a narrative tool to tell a story. Yeah. It's not a story about people with disabilities. It's a story about this world.
Yeah. Yeah, and I enjoyed it. I mean, I devoured this book. I read it, and I read it fast.
Yeah.
And I would recommend everyone read it, but I do think that I had one primary complaint with the book.
Let's hear it. Let's see if it's my primary complaint.
My primary complaint was really nothing more than, oh shit, we're out of pages. We need to end this book now.
Yeah, it was one of those things that I'm like, wow. I mean,
that just came together way too fast.
In the chapters leading up to it, I was like, wow, there's not a lot of book left. This all just, like, all the exposition they're saying just must be what it is. Because how can they throw, like, a twist or some further conflict into it? The whole thing felt very Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
That's what reminded me, because, like, even at the end of it, they're like, we got you. Yeah, and I would have got away with it too if it wasn't for you, Chris Shane, and your stupid Agent
Right.
Fan. I mean, it
Yeah, I mean,
it was the lack of conflict, really, that in terms of storytelling, it was very. It felt like an episode of a TV show, a good episode of a TV show, but one where they know that they have to do another 13 more episodes, so they can't kill off main characters. They can't get fun with it.
yeah, and uh, like it, there were a lot of possibilities here that would have made this very interesting. One ending that would have made it really fucking funny, not funny, but like a complete punch to the head. But once again, it's not a happy ending. Could you imagine if Chris's dad was the villain?
And I sort of like had thoughts of that. It's like, is it possible? Could he possibly be involved with this? And then as the book was wrapping up, I'm like, no, it's got to be this guy because there's one chapter left, and this is just going to be all the closing exposition. So it's
right.
done.
There's one chapter left. Chris's father uses a shotgun and kills a guy. Who's come to kill Chris. Like XYZ, everything's falling into place, and I guess, and that really, I guess, really is my only complaint about this book was it came together so perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, and to say that, like, it was a good story. I recommend you read it.
Yes.
But if you're looking for something that is going to shock you, it's not going to do that.
Right. Go play Mass Effect.
Go play Mass Effect when it first came out.
But all things considered, like there were some really good things I've liked about this book. I really found it was big on the capitalism, talking about these big companies and how they grew and government funding and what happens when you take government funding away, and for the basketball fans listening, it gave the Washington Wizards an actual win in something which is never going to happen.
Ooh, burn.
I'm a Knicks fan. Never going to happen there either. And yeah, no, it was good. Yeah.
Well, I thought the story elements, and this is why it doesn't bug me that they took a disability and they introduced this character, Chris Shane, who didn't really have to deal with it at all. I think that the world of Hayden's was very interesting. Like, it was just a cool system that they had going with the integrators and the threeps, and then they had this thing called the Agora, which they can live on, which is effectively this big, like, it was PlayStation Home.
Yeah, pretty much.
If you know anything about PlayStation Home, the Agora is PlayStation Home for Hayden's. They can go and create their own virtual space, and they can invite people into it and do all sorts of stuff, and they can exist as themselves there if they were not locked in. So they have this avatar of themselves that is. It was.
Well, it presents a very interesting argument, and I think this argument was presented in the book a little bit. Is do you have to be able to walk around to be alive? And more than that, can you have a fulfilling life in a virtual universe?
Well, yeah, that argument came at the dinner table in the beginning of the book when you have one guy sitting at the one side of the table who's trying to make life better for Hayden's with lock-in syndrome, and then you have another guy at the other end of the table who is trying to cure Hayden's syndrome, and those two are butting heads because is Hayden's syndrome bad?
Well,
is it something that needs to be cured?
I remember I was watching a TV show once. I can't remember the name of it, but it was one of those many doctor shows. And in comes a girl who is deaf. And the doctor says, "I can do this, and this will cure the deaf. She will be able to hear."
Okay.
And the mother, who is also deaf, says, "No, you're not doing the surgery."
Yeah.
And I was very conflicted when I watched that because, like, I'm blind in one eye, and if I had the ability to get that eyesight back, I would take it because I don't want to be inhibited by anything.
Yeah.
And yes, there's nothing wrong with being deaf, but if you can hear, why not?
Yeah.
And it's
and spoiler alert, the guy who was arguing against curing Hayden's was the bad guy.
well, of course. He finds it to be very profitable for people to have Hayden's. But the idea is, should you cure it? If we could cure, one second, I'm going to sneeze. It's going to come at some random point. If you could cure deafness, or if you could cure blindness, is it the right thing to do?
I would say yes. But then again, this isn't deafness or blindness. This is a lock-in syndrome in which they have created all these technologies, and they mention that these technologies that they created for Hayden specifically can be expanded beyond the Hayden syndrome to other situations.
You know, an average person could quote unquote lock in and be part of that, you know, environment, and then leave, and they would be able to unlock.
Yeah.
You know, and that's true. You know, but I remember that chapter, and I really liked that chapter because that chapter really, everything, the rest of the book is a fast, you know, cops and robbers kind of story.
Yeah.
But that chapter was the real philosophy of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And that chapter really does bring the disability and makes the disability very clear is, you know, these people, they're able to live lives. They have everything for them. Do they need to be cured? Is it something that needs to be cured? And I loved that.
Yeah, well, and it definitely brought up a moral conundrum that sort of was very prevalent throughout the book.
Yeah. So if John is ever listening to this, John Scalzi, if you're ever listening to this podcast, I loved that chapter. That was fantastic.
Well, and I would love to hear more stories in this universe. I think it's a cool world that you built.
Yeah, definitely. And for the record, we were not paid to say any of this stuff. As you hear, we have said negatives about the book. That's just how we are.
Yeah, so. But I would gladly accept money.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, this book was good. This book, you know, do I think it was a 5-star? I don't know. Probably not. I mean, did it entertain me? Yes. But since I have not read other one of John Scalzi's books, I can't recommend them. But considering the fact I've heard other people's opinions about his other books, I'm going to say this probably isn't one of his top books.
Mm-hmm.
But I need to read it myself, before I can make that opinion. But of other books I've read, even in the past few months, this probably isn't the top one, but it's up there.
Yeah, well, and for me personally, it was a win-win for me. I'm a slow reader. I take a while to read stuff. This is an easy read. It's quick. Yeah. It's not a very big book.
Yep.
It's a very digestible story, and although it does get complicated and confusing at times with because they get into software and coding and tech, yep. He boils it down and he makes it very understandable, and it was an entertaining story. So despite all my gripes with the ending, I enjoyed reading the book, which is the highest praise I can give to something, because if I don't enjoy it, I'm not going to finish it.
Exactly. You know, and you know, Amazon of 108 reviews gave it 4.5 stars, so obviously they did something right there, you know. And yeah, and that's the real thing, is it was a fun book. So go and buy it. This came out not even a month ago. It is, as I'm recording this with you, Chris, it is $15.80 hardcover, or $10.67 on Kindle. You can go other places if you want to buy it somewhere else. Support your local bookstore.
Yes, do that.
And read it, and you know, give your support to John Scalzi so he can keep writing these kind of books, because with that, if no one buys these things, science fiction doesn't get published.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And please, if you've read the book and you've stuck with us this long and listened to the spoiler section and have your own opinion that might differ from ours, please shoot us a comment or something. Let us know.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll read out some of your comments next week. And if we don't get any comments, you won't hear it next week.
Booyah.
So that is the end of episode 9 of FTL Radio. We are just shy of an hour, I believe.
Just shy of an hour.
As always, thank you so much for listening. We are on Twitter and Facebook, twitter.com/FTL Radio, facebook.com/FTL Radio. You can subscribe on iTunes. Please leave a 5-star review, or don't leave a review at all, or not. Leave a review no matter what you think of us. Reviews are great. They help us get found, help other people listen to us. We're also on Stitcher, and you can always email us at info@ftlradio.com. Thank you so much for listening, and if you are an independent writer and would like us to review your book, or you've made a short film, or anything along those lines, please feel free to forward it to us, and we will take it into consideration. Thanks so much for listening.
Yeah, thank you so much. We are out.